city?
No, it's I mean, it's famous. It's small, but it's all like this great wall board choices, like type of town. And it's in Tuscany. To Pisa, to Cinque Terre.
But in some of the main hubs, you can speak English about that. Just not getting that.
There are a lot of tourists. You can certainly get away, but it's, certain things you know.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order our August 7th Douglas County School District Board of Education meeting. We apologize for running a little bit late today, but we are grateful to see a full house today. I will begin with roll call. Director Chancho Shore.
I'm here.
Director Graziano. Here. Director Holtzman.
Here.
Director Lemieux.
Here.
Director Lung.
Here.
Director Ray's here, and Director Vogel.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start the staff recognitions, Dr. Tucker, just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that 60 years ago, 17 smaller school districts scattered throughout the county decided to come together and to merge into one district. There was a reality even then that coming together and being interdependent offered many more resources and benefits for our students than the old scenario of divide and conquer. And this resulted in the new name, Douglas County School District RE1. The RE1, as I have shared before, actually stands for the first reorganization back in 1958. And so here we are 60 years later, reinforcing this notion that interdependence and uniting because it offers us a power that is far greater than when we simply divide. I find it not at all coincidental, Dr. Tucker, that you have been screaming at the top of your lungs unity of purpose. So on our 60th anniversary, I think certainly we have a new motto, not only the first reorganization celebration that we're 60 years old, but certainly we are reestablishing this notion of unity of purpose. And so I just want to take a moment to say happy birthday to Douglas County School District, and we wish it 60 more years of excellence in terms of educating our children. And now, Dr. Tucker, staff and student recognitions. We'll have a birthday cake next. Absolutely, absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. As Director Ray said, we have a full house tonight. Good evening, everyone. There you go. To Director Ray, all of our directors, our guests, our students, it is such a pleasure to serve as your superintendent to help serve and meet the needs of our 68,000 students. And as Director Ray said, unity of purpose. Before we get started with the main part of this program, we have a short video we want to show you. Let's cue that video up.
This is orchestra.
Some are shy, some are timid, some are overly confident.
High school orchestra takes all kinds.
You're gonna back up, pan back.
Mark Wood is one of a kind.
It's a joy to look at you. The others I don't know about, but you are a joy.
He's a guest instructor at Highlands Ranch High School.
Some of you are standing like trees.
One with a resume that students know.
He invented a whole bunch of
I
instruments.
started building electric violins when I was about 12 years old. 1, 2, ready, go! I got a full scholarship to a school in New York called Juilliard.
His talent was never in question, but the heart didn't always follow.
I could play any complicated classical music, but I couldn't play one note of my own.
So he decided to forge his own path.
You know what? I'm going to be the first electric viola player in the world, and I'm going to play Jimi Hendrix on my viola. I can't hear you!
He was mentored by Leonard Bernstein. He toured with the likes of Billy Joel, Celine Dion, and Kanye West.
He was a member of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra.
Now, he's giving back what he found in himself all those years ago.
I love working with kids because kids are the future. They are also empty vessels that we can inspire.
This orchestra's first movement? Well, movement.
Down, that's it.
We usually don't move, and now they're forcing us to move, so it's a new thing to do.
Thank you, perfect. You can move your head if you want.
Once you get the flow of it, you can't stop moving.
How is it that some of you aren't moving at all?
The next movement? Finding your passion.
I don't think oftentimes students always think about, what do I love?
What kind of music do you listen to that gives you goosebumps?
Guns N' Roses.
Bob Marley and Metallica. How awesome is this guy? When I hear Back in Black, I am shaking with awe.
Because good music knows no genre.
Like the rock and roll is gnarly, but you know, the classical, you can never go wrong with classical.
It can be anything. It can be Beethoven to AC/DC.
Playing rock and roll has never been about the notes on the page.
Can you do that by memory? Because I will take all of your music and burn it. When you can do things by memory, you're free. Show me the freedom. 3, 4.
The goal is to express their inner joy.
Yes, I'm free.
You get the sense of music and passion and freedom.
It will all be on display at the next day's concert.
And it's not just any concert, it's a rock concert.
Elementary, middle, and high schoolers sharing the stage with Mark Wood.
Hello, Highland Ranch. Joseph the Rockstar.
In one day, they've learned a little more about who they are.
You are not a bass player or cello player. You are musicians.
And how to do what they do with a passion.
Music has let me release myself, express myself.
If we could use our instruments as a way to communicate to the modern world, we win. I'm going to make you cry, I'm going to make you laugh, I'm going to make you fall in love. And I'm not going to say a word. And I'm not going to say a word.
Yes. By the way, that video was produced right here in our communications department. Let's give our staff a round of applause. At each of our board meetings, it's an opportunity for us to recognize outstanding students and staff, because really that's what board meetings should be about. It should be about our students, should be about our staff, and it should be about our community. Now, at this time, I would like to recognize an individual in the communications department. The story you just saw is one of 5 Douglas County School District videos that were nominated for an Emmy by the National Academy of Television, Arts, and Science Heartland Chapter. 5 Emmys, 5 Emmy nominations. Yes. On behalf of our board of directors and our community, we are extremely proud to honor the creator of these Emmy-nominated pieces, Wood DCSD's very own multimedia producer, Chris Shaleen. Please join me up here. And provide us a few comments while Director Ray comes down, and we'll have an award to present to Chris as well.
Well, thank you very much. It's just an honor to work in a place where there's a million stories out there in all the different schools. Schools are just a landmine of great stories like that one, and I get the chance to tell them, and I get the support of a great team and great leaders, and I couldn't be happier to be doing what I'm doing. So thanks to all of you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hang on your wall now, man.
Yes, we'll do. We'll do. Here, well, you take it.
Again, let's give Chris another round of applause in our entire communications department. In a few days, we will start the beginning of the 18-19 school year. Let's make this the best year ever. Thank you.
It gives me great pride to say thank you, Superintendent Tucker. Thank you for being here. Okay, next on our agenda is to accept the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Motion's been made.
Second it.
Holtz, seconded by Director Holtzman. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano. Aye. Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
Okay. Next on our agenda is open comment. It is our desire to hear the diverse viewpoints from a broad spectrum of citizens throughout the district on any issue that impacts the educational needs of our students. The board would like the discourse in this room to occur in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Everyone in this room plays an important part in modeling appropriate behavior and promoting a climate of mutual respect. We encourage you to focus on the issue as opposed to a specific person. Therefore, please refrain from using individual names in a defaming manner. We also adhere to our board policy KE, public complaints, which outlines the process for responding to grievances and complaints as close to the origin as possible. Therefore, we encourage the proper channeling of concerns. For example, concerns involving a child should begin with the teacher, then the building administrator, then the director of schools, assistant superintendent, and superintendent before appealing to the Board of Education. We also ask that a similar process be used if you have concerns regarding a specific board member. The first step is to contact and discuss your concern with that individual board member. If no resolution, then contacting me or Vice President Vogel. If it's still not satisfactorily resolved, then addressing the entire board is appropriate. We definitely want to promote a world where people speak with each other as opposed to about each other. Tonight, each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board. Please know that this is our time to just listen, and therefore an immediate response is usually not given. However, we take your concerns very seriously and do everything possible to get your questions answered, or request an appropriate staff person to get in contact with you, or we will address the topic in a future agenda item. We are have a full schedule of speakers today, and so I would also ask that if there is a previous speaker that articulately states your concern, if you would just come to the podium and recognize that previous speaker to help us with our time management tonight. I will call speakers in the order that they are grouped according to topics, and I will also call the speaker that is to come afterwards, so if you would be ready as well. So our first speaker tonight is Jenalyn Byrie, and after Jenalyn is Kathy Redmond. It's probably Jenny Lynn, isn't it? Sorry. Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jenny Lynn Beery, and I reluctantly resigned as a DCSD bus driver on July 25th of this year. I am a small business owner as well. I own a custom t-shirt shop with my husband. Our business model relies on sales within our community, including the local schools, to support their clubs, athletics, and activities. And my company, Big Frog Custom T-Shirts, requested to be on the approved vendor list for Douglas County School District, but was denied because I was an employee, and this was perceived as a conflict of interest. I loved my job as a bus driver. I loved my kids, and interacting with them brought me joy and satisfaction. And I'd like to think that they liked me too. At least I hope they did. I had no accidents or complaints, and I have provided you all with a letter of recommendation from one of the supervisors regarding my performance as a driver. I did not want to quit, but did not want to hamper our business's ability to provide goods and services to local schools. I know that DCSD struggles to hire and keep bus drivers, but I made the difficult decision to resign in light of the potential impact my continued employment would have on our small business. I have reviewed the district's policies concerning staff conflicts of interest, and I do not believe that my situation presented such a conflict. I did not perform work for Big Frog during my district workday, nor did my business influence my assigned duties and responsibilities as a bus driver. Similarly, as a bus driver, I was not in a position to influence the purchasing decisions of the district or its schools to the benefit of Big Frog. Therefore, pursuant to district policy DJR, which I've given you all a little bit of that wording, I am respectfully requesting the board's approval for Big Frog custom t-shirts to be allowed to sell goods, materials, and services to the district in the event that I reapply and am rehired as a bus driver. Out of an abundance of caution and to avoid any appearance of impropriety, if I were rehired, I would agree not to solicit or bid on any t-shirt or apparel order from the Department of Transportation within the Douglas County School District. I just want to thank you for your time and consideration of this request.
Thank you, Mrs. Byrie, and thank you for your service as a bus driver to our district. We appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Mrs. Kathy Redmond. After Kathy Redmond is Palmer Huff.
I haven't done this in a very long time. Hello, some of you may know me as previously being the parent liaison, parent and community liaison here. It's great to be in front of you all. I am here because I have concerns about student safety and about Title IX in particular. And I consult so far on around 30 lawsuits across the country, consult plaintiffs' attorneys on Title IX violations. I consult sports teams on their prevention. I also consult the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education and their investigators. And we have, in the metro area and some of the school districts, we have investigations that are going on as part of OCR. And to give you a little bit of background, I was a coach in Douglas County as well. I intervened for quite a few girls who were having issues, sexual harassment, sexual assault. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know who to talk to. They didn't know what their rights were. Thankfully, I knew enough to step in. We've labeled sexual assault, sexual harassment as bullying and sexting, and it's doing our girls a disservice. We need to do a better job of education, of awareness, but frankly of advocacy. Children learn in an environment where they feel safe, and I'm concerned that so many of the things that girls have to deal with in school on a day-to-day basis has been socialized and conditioned as boys being boys. I filed the first Title IX lawsuit back in 1995. And I know the difficulty, I know the effects on victims. And I want to see this school district in particular, because I care about it. I have a son who's a senior at Castleview, another who's going to go into Meadowview. I want to make sure that they're safe, and I want to make sure that parents are educated about it. And this is an issue where I feel like Douglas County could be a leader on it. There definitely are the resources in the community. There's the desire in the community. This isn't just Republican or Democrat. There is a unified desire in the community to see that this is addressed. So I'm just coming to you, asking you to make this a priority and offering whatever services that you need from me to make sure that our kids are safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Redmond. Palmer Hof, and then after Palmer is Gary Colley. Did I butcher your last name, Palmer?
Well, I taught you last time.
I know you did, and I just completely...
No, it's Hoig. Hoig. I know, I'm the most important person.
Ms.
So.
Hoig.
It's totally fine. So my name is Palmer Hoig. I am a proud teacher at Highlands Ranch High School, and I am a Douglas County Federation member. I'm here to, as a part of the Douglas County Federation's Education Research Series, and to share some independent research on labor management collaboration. Although I've given you a great deal of research tonight, I want to highlight one study in particular. The 10-year study completed by Rutgers focused on the effects that building strong relationships among teachers' unions and school administrators would have on the students' achievement. The results were undeniable. 12.5% more students performed at or above standards in language arts compared to the students in the systems without collaboration. The math scores weren't as high, but were statistically significant as well. Additionally, every year, Education Week ranks all the education systems in the country. And consistently, what they find is that the top 10 education systems have a strong union, and the bottom have a weak or non-existent union. This highlights the importance of formalized labor management collaboration. When educators contribute to decisions, students benefit. Positions in DCSD were highly sought when labor management collaboration was at its strongest. And through collaboration, we can attract and retain the best educators once again. I hope that you'll read this research and use it to help guide your policy decisions. Live stream viewers and audience members can find the research on our website, douglascountyfederation.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hoig. Gary Colley. After Gary is Laura Welch.
Good evening, Board. I want to commend you on the DAC training that was put on last night and Dr. Tucker's leadership with that. That's not part of my public comment, but I'm stalling until you get what I have to say. And while I'm waiting, by the way, I brought this up with other school boards. You know, the CAC represents a lot of voices throughout the district. And when you have multiple action items, a lot of times people don't want to come before the board, but they bring up, could this be addressed? And so I asked a question on my submission to speak. How do you do something like that? How do you address multiple action items within 3 minutes? So just for your consideration. I would like to comment on action item 16 regarding the bond mill levy that you're going to be looking at tonight. And the CAC really encourages you guys to move forward with that and put trust in the community that they will support you on that. The next thing was an information item number 17, and that was on Douglas County Charter Policy Waiver Request Protocol. And you guys are doing so many great things to unite all the schools within the district and provide equity for everybody. My question for you has to do with what CAC focuses on. That's effective parent and community engagement. And I do know from multiple experiences throughout the past few years that there is not an equity on parent engagement in charters as opposed to neighborhood schools. What I'm asking here is, will expectations, now extend this to all schools though, not just charters, but all schools. Will expectations on accountability related to school accountability committees and overall parent community engagement be consistent throughout the districts within all schools? So just because you're attending a special school, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have the right to effectively engage as a parent and have a voice related to your kids. So how do you do that? I don't know. I was looking at this form that you had here, and one of the things that says focused review, rationale and replacement plan, if a charter wants a waiver. Whatever charters apply for, will it explain, excuse me. There needs to be an explanation of how the school intends to operate within the spirit of the law. If they have a charter that's operating completely different than a neighborhood school, are they still operating within the spirit of the law? Is it a majority parent voice? That type of thing. The next thing you'll see on what I gave you is more for your, I don't want to comment on these in public, but I would like you to take into consideration some of the notes I've made on item 9, item 10, and action item 11. And then I would like to end with this. I'm a retired teacher, got a granddaughter, just born July 31st. And this is, being a teacher, with all respect to everybody that works, superintendent on down to whoever in the district, I'll try to be real quick with this. The reason I commend teachers is that they're the ones that deal with the kids the greatest bulk of the time throughout their day. And teaching isn't curriculum implementation. That's the easy stuff. Teaching is the interaction that takes place, like the music teachers you saw tonight, that impacts the lives of kids beyond that. Therefore, teachers need to be our main focus in Douglas County School District. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Colley. Laura Welch. After Laura Welch is Kristen DeBeer.
Hi, my name is Laura Welch. I'm the parent of one graduate and one current student at Ponderosa High School. I'm here tonight to encourage you to put a bond and mill levy override on the ballot this fall. I suspect many people this evening will talk about the need for a mill levy override to address the pay gap between our teachers and those from neighboring districts. I know you're aware of what those pay gaps are, but I'd like to bring to your attention to a unique pay gap that exists only for the Ponderosa staff. Due to our semi-rural location, proximity to several large aging neighborhoods, and a variety of other factors, our enrollment is lower than that of other DCSD high schools. A consequence of this lower enrollment is that we cannot realize the same economies of scale that the other high schools in the district are able to enjoy. For the past 5 years, our staff has been working on an 8-period schedule. While this was initially true of all high schools, several years ago, the Highlands Ranch schools figured out how to return to a 7-period schedule. The following year, the other 2 Parker high schools and those in Castle Rock joined suit, leaving Ponderosa as the only high school still on an 8-period schedule. So, while teachers at most high schools have to prepare and prep for 5 classes each semester, our staff has to prepare, prep for, and teach 6. They are doing more work than their counterparts in other buildings for the same pay. This is not equitable. I'd also like to address the need for a bond. According to the Master Capital Plan, there are over $1 million worth of high priority needs in Tier 1 at Ponderosa. Many of the systems in this category directly affect the health and safety of students and staff in the building, including poor water treatment systems, all of which need to be replaced, fire alarms which need to be upgraded, boilers which need to be replaced, and ventilation systems in the science, shop, and industrial arts areas that need to be upgraded. In addition to these, there are areas of the school where the flooring, plumbing, or electrical have not been upgraded since the school opened in 1982. For instance, more than 80% of the carpet needs to be replaced to the tune of $1.77 million. One of my own children and several others have received significant electrical shocks while working on lights and sound in the school's theater, where many of the systems have not been upgraded since the school opened 36 years ago. 2 years ago, the Parent Booster Club paid for an outside safety evaluation and learned that not only were some elements of these systems dangerous, but they were so outdated that fixing them was no longer an option. They have to be replaced, and those are expensive. I've spoken to the needs at Ponderosa tonight because that is what I know, but I'm sure parents from any number of our other schools could tell you of similar issues. For this reason, I implore you to put a bond and a levy on the ballot this fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Welch. Kristen DeBeer. After Kristen DeBeer is Jake Miley.
Hello again. I provided public comment regarding special education at the STEM charter school previously, and I'm here tonight to share some additional information relevant to a potential mill levy override. More than a year ago, we were told by STEM that our twice exceptional son's IEP would be unlawfully terminated because he would be participating in STEM-sponsored concurrent enrollment and apprenticeship programs suited best to his hands-on learning style and available to his non-learning disabled peers. We were faced with an impossible choice. While trying desperately to find a solution to keep his IEP, STEM refused to consider any option but the one that forced him to limit his participation in their programs. Ultimately, we filed a state complaint, after which the district was found in violation, and then when the corrective action wasn't followed, we were forced to file another. After finally being given meaningful participation, the district offered that our son receive his services as we had originally proposed outside of his participation in those STEM programs at a mutually agreeable time during a pre-existing study hall at STEM in his upcoming senior year. However, just days later, we received notice that this district had filed a due process complaint against us to avoid providing the compensatory services ordered by the state. The complaint is predicated on the false assertion that we demanded services at the community college, and we demanded no such thing. I believe an MLO is needed. However, we are frustrated that DCSD has spent hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on district legal fees. In the last year, on our case alone, DCSD has paid the Kaplan and Ernest law firm $52,483.47. To put that amount in perspective, here's what this district could have funded in that same time frame instead of fighting against providing our son a free and appropriate public education. An experienced licensed teacher salary for the entire year. 38 teachers training in Orton-Gillingham dyslexia instruction. 130 student subsidies to receive free and reduced lunches. 350 students round-trip Z-Pass bus fees. 3,505 elementary math textbook licenses. 61,140 service minutes for special education, or 276,228 pencils, which is around 4 for every student in the district. Importantly, stated another way, it equates to 210 households funding a potential $250 bond MLO tax increase to line the pockets of lawyers. I'm here tonight to ask you to please consider future decisions about legal expenditures carefully and responsibly. As a school district, your job is to educate students, all students, with equity. I understand and support the need for funding education, but I do not support funding this type of ongoing, wasteful spending, fighting parents who are simply asking that their kids receive a free and appropriate public education without discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBeer. Jake Miley, and then after Jake is Meg Maston.
Good evening. Good evening, board. Dr. Tucker. This is all very official. Hey, thanks. I am here to ask the board to put a revenue measure on the ballot in November. I have lived in Parker most of my life. I went to Pine Lane Elementary School and graduated from Ponderosa High School in 1998. My father-in-law was the assistant principal at Ponderosa for many, many years. My mom was a read and recovery teacher at Southridge Elementary School. My brother and my sister-in-law were both teachers at Legend High School. And finally, before I forget, my wife works part-time at the kids' elementary school, Gold Rush, and I've got 3 sons, 9th grade, 7th grade, and 5th grade. So my roots in Douglas County and in our schools runs deep. And until about a year ago, first of all, I live in Douglas County because we have great schools and because we have a great community. And until a year ago, I had no idea how grossly underfunded our community funds our schools. And this little funding fact guy that came out a while ago, I know I'm stating the obvious to everybody here, but until a year ago, I had no idea that teachers could make $17,000 more in Cherry Creek on average and $13,000 more in Littleton. And if I'm a teacher in Douglas County, I would leave to take that increase. And I heard an assistant principal at a school outside of our district say that Douglas County raises great teachers. I do not want to be the minor leagues for other school districts. I didn't know until a year ago that we had not passed a bond in many, many, many years. And I did not know until a year ago that Cherry Creek receives $1,635 more per student per year than Douglas County from their local community. So these are not okay, and I don't know when in Douglas County this became okay. This is not the Douglas County that I grew up in and our schools that I grew up in. And I will say I believe our community is ready to respond if the board will give us an opportunity to do it. My parents taught me a long time ago not to complain about a problem unless you had a solution. And so I have, with the help of Patty Peter and Maggie Beerbaum, started a citizens committee to advocate for a revenue measure. And I believe there's a phrase that high tide raises all ships. And I believe public education is that high tide. It's good for business, it's good for property values, it's good for jobs, and most of all, it's good for our community and kids. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Miley. Meg Maston. After Meg is Maggie and Peter Beerbaum.
Good evening, and I want to give a warm welcome to Dr. Tucker. My name is Meg Maston. I'm a 25-year resident of Douglas County. My husband and I have 2 kids, both of whom have attended our neighborhood public schools since the first day of kindergarten. Our son just graduated this spring, and our daughter will be a junior at Rock Canyon. I've served on school accountability committees for 8 of the 13 years my kids have attended school. As a result, I've had the opportunity to actively participate in our school's budgeting process alongside our principals. While I recognize that all our public schools have endured financial struggles over the past several years, I'd like to take a moment to frame the unique challenges that our secondary schools have faced. In 2012, $3.6 million was cut from our high school budgets. As a result, teachers were required to teach an additional section of class, reducing their time dedicated to meeting the needs of individual students who required extra help. Class sizes went up. Students now had off periods. Academic programming was cut. Some staff was let go, and others left for better opportunities in neighboring districts. Just 5 years later, the operating budgets of our secondary schools suffered a decrease of $3 million. And once again, class sizes went up, more students were forced to have off periods, educational choice was cut, and there was a significant staff turnover. Funding has never been restored for either round of these cuts. At a time when students need perhaps the most support in their lives with academic structure, mental health services, consistency of staff, and social guidance, our middle and high school students are currently in learning environments operating on a net $6.6 million less than originally budgeted just 6 years ago. The plight of our secondary schools is just one example of the critical need for a long-term funding solution in Douglas County. And I want to sincerely thank this board for considering a ballot measure to responsibly address the fiscal crisis we face. The solution is long overdue. I'm asking the board to vote in favor of placing a bond and mill levy override on this November's ballot to support our local schools. You have my unwavering support of such a measure and that of countless other Douglas County residents. We will work tirelessly to educate and inform the community at large of the value this would bring to all. We will help you achieve success in November if you so choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maston. Maggie and Peter Beerbaum, and after Maggie and Peter is Delana Maines.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First, thank you, board members, for your volunteer service to our community. Maggie and I are among Douglas County that look forward to this board making improvements to our 60-year-old school district here. We appreciate the work you've already done, including bringing us an outstanding district superintendent, Dr. Thomas Tucker, meeting with the charter school leadership on bond and mill levy, and working to unify our community, implementing measures to create transparency and trust. It's my turn. We're going to take turns back and forth. We think for each other. So again, thank you for your volunteer service on the Board of Education. We know what commitment that takes. Dr. Tucker, thank you for coming to Douglas County. We're thrilled. We appreciate all the time that you put in. Dr. Tucker, you know, all the time you did before you even were working here. You were out here helping and just investing in our community right away.
Thank you for your nonstop engagement over the last 37 days, meeting with community members, understanding our own issues as a unique school district, and working on resolutions for challenging topics. So you can see why Peter and I are very optimistic. I'm bending over too much. We're very optimistic about this community, but we recognize there's a big problem. We are the wealthiest county in Colorado on a per median household basis and in the top 10 in the nation, but we do not adequately fund our schools. We do not adequately fund our schools.
It's been over a decade since we passed a bond mill levy override, and frankly, it's just embarrassing for us as a community.
So Peter and I, and then you met Jake Miley, awesome gentleman, and we created a citizens committee to encourage a bond and mill levy override on this year's ballot and to campaign to win if such a measure is put on the ballot. We've received overwhelming support from volunteers, business owners, community leaders. We have over 760 signatures on a petition of support that we have out there in the community for a funding measure.
And our two children have actually completed K through 12 in Douglas County District. They're done with college and they're actually starting their careers. We have no reason to volunteer, except for, like each of you, we care deeply about this community and all the kids within this community. Lack of funding impacts our businesses, our property values, and the choices we make as a county.
If we choose to go forward with good funding, we can create academic excellence for all kids. As citizens, as you see tonight, we are coming together to respectfully ask the board to continue to move forward and to carefully consider the options presented by Dr. Tucker. We look forward to presenting our petition of support and bringing many community voices to the August 21st board meeting.
Thank you for listening to our comments.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Bierbaum. Delana Maines. After Delana Maines is Claire Leonard.
My name is Delana Maines. I'm the parent of two Thunder Ridge High School students, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I moved to Highlands Ranch 17 years ago, in part because of the schools. I was told they were as good as Cherry Creek, and I wanted to live in a community that valued educating children. I wanted my children to have rich learning opportunities with lots of different programs for different learners. Unfortunately, we have not funded our schools in a way that shows we value our students. I have instead watched as programs have been cut and teachers have left our district. My children have gone to the same schools for their entire time, and they have shared two teachers. So my son was continually disappointed to get to a grade and find out that teacher had left. By comparison, my expository writing teacher in 1985 taught my nephew in 2007 and my niece in 2011. And I've listened very jealously as friends have told me about the wonderful learning opportunities their children had years ago here in Douglas County. My kids didn't have the same opportunities, and my son, who's on an IEP, would benefit from a great program one year, and it would be cut the next year. There is less choice in electives. An elementary world language program was completely cut, and the middle school music program was cut in half. But what bothers me the most is the dedicated professionals who just skipped over the county line to districts where they were paid better and felt more valued. Our community went through tough times prior to this board, but I watched our community come together to do what was best for our students, and I know our community, when given the chance, will come together again. The Douglas County community is united and ready to get to work. Let us show you that we value school funding. I respectfully ask that you place a funding measure on the November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Maines. Claire Leonard, and after Claire is Jason Verdon.
I'm a former Douglas County School Board member, as you all know. And the first thing I want to say is thank you to each of you board members. Anthony, Kevin, Wendy, David, Krista, Anne Marie, and Chris. You all have shown an integrity in the way that you comport yourselves
in your words and in your actions. And you're setting the tone at the school district at the top, and I commend you for that. In fact, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's rare that you can say it's a pleasure to be at a school board meeting, right? Second, on behalf of many former board members and past administrators, I welcome you to the school district, Dr. Tucker. And there's a deep reservoir of support for you here, and there's a thirst for your leadership. So we all wish you the best success in your tenure as superintendent. Those things said, the most important reason I'm here tonight is to encourage the board to place an MLO bond request on the ballot this fall. The need is clear, and the polling indicates our community will support it. I remember addressing you at this podium last February or March and arguing that the most important decision you would make as a school board member is the hiring of a superintendent. I suggest tonight that the decision to place an MLO bond question on the ballot is equally important because that question and a campaign on its behalf goes to the heart of your fiduciary responsibilities. You have a duty to maintain our school district's physical assets and our human assets, not only because they so clearly correlate with student safety and achievement, but also because investment in those assets leads to a fiscally sound school district. It is shameful that recent boards have shirked their fiduciary responsibilities, thereby leaving the district assets in poor condition. You inherited that condition, but you now have an opportunity. You have solid support to lead this district toward a much brighter future, and I'm confident you will make the right decision. I have a question for you, Dr. Tucker. You don't have to answer it, but you did do your homework. I know you did. Do you know who the first superintendent of Douglas County was? Okay. There have not been that many, actually. His name is Lowell Baumick. And he actually trained, sort of mentored Rick O'Connell, who I'm sure that you do know. I'm sure you will. And one last piece of advice that just personally, I would not worry about what else is on the ballot. Your focus is on Douglas County and your fiduciary responsibilities. And by doing the right thing, you can't go wrong, even if you lose. Thank you.
Thank you, former Board Director Leonard. Jason Verdon, and after Jason is Sherry Hurt. Jason, your family has grown since I've seen you last.
Extended family, exactly. Good evening, directors, and welcome to DCSD, Dr. Tucker. I'm Darian Wilson, and this is Maria Lauer and Jason Burden, and we're with Douglas County Parents, a public education advocacy group. And this is my daughter, Rose. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. She's a student here in DCSD. We'd like to express our support for a bond and mill levy override, questions to be placed on this year's ballot. It's been 12 years since our school district has passed a bond or MLO, and the need becomes more apparent with each passing day. Our teachers are among the lowest paid educators in the Denver area, and every year we lose more quality teachers to neighboring districts. Our teachers know they can dramatically increase their salaries just by crossing County Line Road. We appreciate their dedication, but this is not sustainable.
From a capital needs perspective, we're now drawing from the general fund to help repair and maintain buildings, further reducing the funds that should be used for curriculum, teacher pay, and educational materials. Already, parents are asked to supply copy paper, tissue, whiteboard markers because schools are so underfunded. Additionally, the numerous Tier 1 needs in our district have the potential to impact our student safety in the near future. In short, our schools are in dire need of a financial infusion to remain competitive with neighboring districts and give students the education that they deserve. We understand that Amendment 73, as mentioned in the previous comment, is potentially going to end up on this year's ballot as well, and that may complicate your decision. Regardless of whether or not Amendment 73 appears on the ballot, we ask that you place both a bond and a mill levy override question on the ballot. While the passing of Amendment 73 would benefit our district It will do nothing to close the funding gap between our district and our neighboring districts. Closing that funding gap is critically important and is necessary to improve the educational opportunities for our students. In addition, we feel that it is important to remind our community that 100% of our mill levy override dollars stay locally.
As a public education advocacy group, we value any funding to support our students, teachers, and schools. The bottom line is that we need funding to make our district the destination district it once was for both students and teachers. Our children deserve the very best education. We firmly believe the future of Douglas County School District is in your hands. We know you take this responsibility very seriously. We urge you to give the voters the opportunity to act in the best interest of our children and our community.
Very good. Thank you, Marie, Jason, Darian, and Rose especially. Sherry Hurt, and after Sherry is Glen Kirby.
Good evening. My name is Sherry Hurt. I've been with the district for 19 years, and the DCFCE asked me to address you. I am totally in favor of doing something for the teachers to keep them here. Without them, support for the teachers, there's no reason for us to be here. However, I would like to hope that at some point, you guys are going to do something for the classified employees that were here through the wage freeze. We are that gap between home and school and transportation. I personally train school bus drivers. My forte is student management, and I would like to hope that I'm going to get an opportunity to be compensated better, that I'm going to feel as though there's value to my job, and that something is going to be done for the classified employees that have stayed. I know the teachers come first, and I am totally in favor of that, but please don't forget the rest of us that provide support to the students.
Thank you, Ms. Hurt, and thank you for your service to our district. Glen Kirby. After Glen Kirby is Milou Weatherly, or Milou Weatherly.
Good evening. My name is Glen Kirby. I'm an electrician in the DCSD Operations and Maintenance Department. I've been an employee of the district for 14 years. I'm also a parent of 2 DCSD students, one who graduated from Thunder Ridge High School in 2016, and one who will be a senior this year at Thunder Ridge. I'm here to ask you to strongly consider both a mill levy override and a bond measure on the November ballot. My request is based on my experience and frustration with the current situation in our facilities. I am assigned to the Castleview and Douglas County feeder areas. So I am currently routinely in 16 different schools. Our facilities are aging, and the list of repairs and upgrades grows every day. Because funding is limited, the district is placed in a position of choosing which repairs can be made and which one will be placed on hold. Much of the equipment critical to providing a quality education environment is aging and moments away from failure. In some instances, the vendor is no longer supporting that model and parts are not available. I'm proud that DCSD places students first. I'm also aware that our financial limitations are causing us to fall further and further behind surrounding districts who have successfully passed mill levy overrides and bond measures. A prime example is our ability to provide new updated technology and updated projectors in our classrooms. Our students deserve better. I'm dedicated to doing everything within my power to create and maintain an environment that supports high-quality education. I'm now asking you to do what it takes to provide funding required. Again, I'm asking that you strongly consider placing a mill levy override and bond measure in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby, and also thank you for your service to our district as well.
You're welcome.
Milou Weatherly, and after Milou is Karen Becker. And did I butcher your first name, Milou?
Well, it's actually the French Milou.
Milou, okay, got
Mimi's Cafe.
All right.
But anyway, that's great. No, it's good. I appreciate the opportunity to speak as well. My name is Milou Weatherly. I'm a career coach for the Bridge program, and the Bridge program is a program that we serve the special needs young adults 18 to 21. We work on community skills, life skills, and job opportunity skills for them. We are responsible for going to the community and finding access for them so they can appreciate and experience their community with recreation and social activities. We go to employers to seek opportunities for them to learn skills that will provide them with opportunities in the future. That's what we're responsible for. We want every student that we have to be able to be successful and present themselves in the best light that they can in the community and in the employment opportunities that we provide. We want them to be able to appreciate their own self-worth and also be able to grow. In order to do that, we need adequate facilities. We are spread out. Our program, we deal with minimal, moderate, and severe needs students. We are spread out in the district. We are in Castle Rock, Parker, Highlands Ranch in 4 separate facilities, which in and of itself provides a tremendous burden on transportation. We also need the transportation within our program to get them out to the community and to get them to their job sites. Reliable transportation. We don't have the numbers of transportation that we need, and we don't have reliable transportation. We also need, like I say, adequate facility because we're spread out. We are asking also that you recognize that our responsibilities as career coaches is different than educational assistants, which that's where we are provided, that's where we are placed now in the educational assistant realm. Our certificates and requirements are much more. We are also considered route drivers because we transport students. We ask that you put this mill levy on, and not forget about the Bridge program. We're a little entity out there that we want you to remember and know that we want you to support us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Witherling, and thank you also for your service to our very special Bridge students. Thank you very much. Karen Becker. After Karen Becker is Les Lilly.
Kind of taller here. Thank you so much for your service, and Dr. Tucker, welcome. My name is Karen Becker, and I'm a parent of a 5th grader at Copper Mesa Elementary School. In 2007, we bought a home in Highlands Ranch because of the strength of the school district specifically. And I grew up going to public school. I have a really strong public school background, so that's what I wanted for my child. So I served 6 years on the Long Range Planning Committee, so many of you guys know me through that. And this summer I stepped down to join the campaign, The Bright Futures for Douglas County Kids. I joined Long Range Planning Committee actually back in 2011 when the district failed to pass a bond. And at that time, or the end of mill levy, and at the time I perceived that the board really wasn't in support of it, even though it was put on the ballot. So I'm excited that it seems like you guys are supportive and you're going to maybe put it on the ballot. So at that time, in 2011, we had substantial capital needs, even at that time, and they've grown since that time. Our school buildings, IT systems, buses have continued to age. There's been minimal funding for replacing heating, air conditioning. The electrical team here must be doing miracles, honestly. And all this has, a lot of the schools are aging. We have you guys know, we have 89 schools, and I think over 60 schools are in the master capital plan that are over 20 years that are needing repairs. So what I'm asking is that at the same time, we haven't passed the bond and mill levy, so since 2006. So we're not only not replacing equipment, but the other school districts in our area have been creating innovative learning spaces, experiential laboratories, and they've been emphasizing, STEM and STEAM programs for all students, not just certain charters or things like that. So I'm thinking, gosh, we have so many capital needs, and then on top of that, we could use some real burst of funding for creative spaces for our kids. I work in the construction industry, and the longer we wait to complete these improvements to our schools, the more it will cost the taxpayer. The master capital plan, and I will note it's on page like 283 of the master capital plan, says that there's over $350 million in unfunded capital needs. So I'm just, you guys know that, but I'm just saying that for the group, you know. So page 2, you know, it's like back of the book, look for it. Last year, my son's teacher left 6 weeks into the school year for a better job in Denver Public Schools. Her child actually attends our school, so she's supportive of our school, but she had to go find a better job. We can't blame our teachers and staff for leaving for better paying jobs elsewhere when we have not passed a mill levy override since 2006. And these pay gaps, and I want to emphasize the staff too, like we can't keep people in their jobs. So I'm asking you to support the mill levy and the bond in this fall in the November election. And I believe that will attract even businesses to our community. So it's important for that. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mrs. Becker. After Les Lilly is Cindy Barnard.
Thank you. I have to apologize for the t-shirt. You know, usually I'm in shirt and tie too, but I thought this was appropriate that we are all Douglas County School District tonight. So anyway, thank you, President Ray and directors, for the opportunity to speak to you again. And I want to thank Dr. Tucker personally for speaking at our Bus Fest last Friday, and I support him on unity of purpose. Well said. Anyway, moving on. I spoke to you on the June 5th and opened by commenting that I wasn't here to throw anyone under the bus, but little did I know that by the end of the meeting that I would be one of the 1,591 other employees that would be thrown under the bus by the board choosing option 5 of the pay raise options presented by staff at that time. As a reminder, option 5 provided a 2% compounded pay increase for only the licensed group that were here during the pay freeze years of 2008 and 2012. To paraphrase what you said, President Ray, at that meeting in support of option 5 was that you weren't differentiating between the two groups, that there was a problem to be fixed, that in order to not break the bank, because you had $15 million to work with for pay raises, and that if the board decided to place an MLO on the ballot this fall, the problem could be fixed. In my opinion, that was totally unfair. We are all here for our students, and though teachers stand in front of them, I have my back to them, by the way, we all care about them equally. I have talked to many teachers and administrators who said they cannot do their jobs without us. I knew the cost for the teachers' pay increase was approximately $4.8 million. I was curious what the cost would be for the 1,591 other employees. Staff eventually provided that information to me. $2 million. With that said, my question before you tonight is, in the staff recommendations before you tonight, where the Douglas County staff recommends MLO option 2, $40 million, with $16 million targeted for compensation adjustments, will $2 million of that be used to fill the shortfall of the funding for those 1,591 classified pro-tech admin employees who didn't receive the increases for those pay freeze years? With a teacher receiving a 2% increase compounded for every year they were in a pay freeze and a highly effective rating on their evaluation, they could have received a 9.2% increase. And you're well aware of that. I received a 3.2. And I was here and toughed out those same pay freeze years. And yesterday, I found out my hours in transportation had been reduced from 40 hours a week to 28.45. I am not happy. I will find it difficult to support an MLO unless the district treats all employees equally and fixes the wreck that transportation has turned into. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lilly, and also thank you for your years of service as a bus driver. We appreciate that. Cindy Barnard. And if Mr. Payne, I don't know if Stephen Ferrandino has arrived or not, but if he has not, the next person after Cindy Barnard would be Jada Fields. Mrs. Barnard.
Good evening, President Ray, directors, Dr. Tucker. I thank you for your time tonight. I have been part of this district for almost 30 years as a parent and also as a volunteer. And about a little over a month ago, I am no longer a resident of Douglas County, but I did want to come and talk to you tonight to speak about the importance of asking the community to support their schools through a passage of a bond and a mill. Funding for our schools has never recovered since the recession, and as a result, Douglas County students do not have the educational opportunities that they so richly deserve. My children attended Douglas County schools during the glory days. Classes were small, administrator and teacher longevity was strong, buildings were maintained, and professional development was the envy of other school districts. And the opportunities, literally for all students, were outstanding. Douglas County School District could do this because we were funded at a responsible level. Enough time has passed that functioning without adequate funding has become the new normal. People don't know what they don't know. But students today do not have the same high-quality opportunities that my children received. Pieces are all in place. We have a board that puts students first. We have an experienced superintendent that believes in a high-quality public education. And we have teachers and administrators that deeply care. The district simply needs the resources to glue it all together. So please give the Douglas County community the opportunity to support its students through a bond and a mill. And I'll be here to help make that happen. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Barnard. If Stephen is not here, we will go on to Jada Fields.
Get my little techno out. Okay. Alrighty. My name is Jada Fields. I am a 2017 Rock Canyon High School graduate. I addressed this board in March of 2017 after I lost one of my favorite teachers at my school to a school in the Cherry Creek School District. This teacher was a single parent with a special needs son and had to work 3 jobs to make up the difference of the salary she needed to successfully support her family. And after an offer of more than a $13,000 a year higher rate, her and her students spread many countless tears as we sadly watched her leave. Over the past year and a half, I have watched other teachers, not only at Rock Canyon, but throughout the school district, leave for better pay elsewhere. I have talked with dozens of other students from across this district that are frustrated, stressed, and downright mad about losing teachers, having overcrowded class sizes, being forced into classrooms in trailers, and their deteriorating school buildings. My heart breaks and my blood boils hearing these stories. We live in such a wealthy and well-educated community, but have not yet learned that we must put the highest priority on valuing the education of the students and then take action to fund this shared value locally. It is up to us. I'm a proud alumni of Rock Canyon and the Douglas County School District. I am also a registered and active voter. Tonight I commit to this board and to my community that I will do everything in my power to work towards passing a meaningful ballot initiative this November, to speak to others in my community about the needs of our students, teachers, and schools, as well as reach out to other student alumni like myself to get out to vote and help pass funding for our schools. I was fortunate to get an amazing education at Rock Canyon that acquired all of the skills necessary to further my life goals. Please put a funded initiative on this ballot so that the skills I acquired during my education from this district will work for upcoming students. I am committed to the future of this district. I hope you are too. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. Heck yeah!
Thank you, Ms. Fields. And Ms. Fields, we will challenge you to inspire your other alumni to register to vote as well. If they're like you, we want them on the on our registry list. All right, Chris Ravston, and then after Chris Ravston is Nina Graziano.
I appreciate the opportunity to address you, board, and I am a grandfather of 3 wonderful grandkids in the school district. And I am going to approach the discussion tonight for the next 2 minutes and 50 seconds on numbers and why it makes sense to pass this. This is what I do for a living, financial planning and investment. So let's talk about the cost. If we take the middle of the road proposition, then it's about $216 a year for an average $470,000 house. So what can you do with $216,000? Well, currently it costs $29,000 to send a student to CU. In 18 years, that's going to be $70,000 if inflation goes up 5%, which it is. So if you save the $216 because you're not paying more property taxes because the bond mill levy didn't pass, and you invest that in 10 years, or 18 years, you've got $10,000. Big deal, right? But you have to pay $70 to send your kid to school. Whereas if he had a good education, he could have gotten a scholarship. Somebody else is paying the heavy freight. You got to do what's right. You got to fund it. Second, there's 2 groups of people that are arguing this. People that have kids or grandkids that are affected, people that don't have kids, and they're not affected by the school, so they say. So let's just talk about home values. The $470,000 home, if we're living in a school district that has the reputation that it's falling apart, people don't want to live there, then we have a compound increase on our home values of 2%. A $470,000 home in 15 years will rise at 2% to $632,000. However, if we live in a school district that has a pattern of excellence and is at the top of the chart in the state and homes go up at 3%, in 15 years, that's $732,000. So you've got $100,000 of equity built in because you paid $200 a year in taxes. I would suggest that passing this bond mill levy is the right thing to do in that instance. Last 47 seconds. I feel like that we have to set a pattern of excellence. We tell our students, strive, do something with your life. If we don't pass this bond mill levy, what are we telling the students? It's okay to fail. It's not okay to fail. And I submit to you that we need to pass the full thing. Let's not go halfway. The difference between doing the full thing and halfway is about $5 a month for the average homeowner. We have to go all the way. Our students, our teachers, everybody that supports the school district deserves a pattern of excellence. We can either have the reputation that we have kids that are so damn dumb they can't pour piss out of a boot with the instructions stamped on the heel, or we can have the reputation that we have the smartest, best educated kids coming out in the state. I submit that we want the latter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ravston. Nina Graziano.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nina Graziano, and I'm going to be a sophomore at Castleview High School this year. I think that a bond and mill levy increase will help our school district for many reasons. 3 common problems that I see almost every day at school that could be fixed are adding a much-needed extension at Castleview High School, reducing the number of off periods by increasing class options, and paying our teachers more so they don't leave for other school districts. Castleview is completely overcrowded. Our classes, hallways, and overall school is packed. More classes are regularly put in mobiles, which isn't a great learning environment. Castleview was supposed to have another part added on, but when the school was being built, it was put on pause. Since then, there hasn't been enough funding for this extension, but with this bond, it would help add more space to my school to help make it less crowded and more student-friendly. Next, I've noticed when I started high school that many students have off periods. In my schedule for this school year, I'm forced to have off periods that I do not want. I would much rather be in a classroom learning something interesting rather than having time wasted with an off period. These off periods are frustrating because I won't have as many classes and possible college credits compared to other students in other districts. Increasing the mill levy will help provide additional funding for classes that everyone would have a full schedule and more learning opportunities. Lastly, many of my favorite teachers have left to go to other districts for better pay. I can't even count on both hands the amount of teachers that I have seen leave for this reason. Increasing mill levy will help pay our teachers competitively so that great teachers will stay in our districts and new ones will want to work here. These are just 3 of the problems that a bond and MLO increase could help. There are many others on top of this. Douglas County students want to attend great schools with the best learning options and the best teachers in a safe learning environment. I really do hope you put the bond and mill levy on the ballot this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Graziano. She sounds much more wiser than someone that's up here on the dais. All right, I just want to thank everyone for your public comment tonight. How fortunate we are to have a community that is engaged and asking us to do what's right for students. So just appreciate your voices tonight. We will close public comment at this time and move on to our next item on our agenda, which is to accept the consent agenda, which consists of 6 items, including eligibility for performance pay, board committee liaison list, cabinet member contracts, our special education task force survey, Spanish translation, Board of Education approval for Superintendent P-card, and personnel changes. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Vogel, seconded by Holtzman, or Lemieux, excuse me. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano. Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
Okay, next on our agenda is the adoption of the unofficial minutes.
I move we adopt the minutes as presented. Second.
Motion made by Lemieux, seconded by Vogel. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano. Aye. Holtzman.
Aye.
Lemieux.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Ray, aye, and Vogel.
Aye.
All right, we now are to our next agenda is superintendent reports. Dr. Tucker will be talking to us about staff recommendations regarding potential mill levy override and bond. Dr. Tucker.
Now, I think I'm in charge of clicking this presentation, so that could be a little dangerous here. Yeah, President Ray, Board of Directors, our guests, our students, staff, thank you for being here tonight. But I have to say, I'm a little uncomfortable going left and right. But I also want to let you all know I'm extremely excited about being here. As I said earlier, I'm excited about helping to lead one of the most effective, yes, most effective and best districts in the entire state and the entire country. And we can be one of the most effective districts in the entire state and country. I'm also excited about the passion for public education that we've heard tonight. The passion to getting back to the way we were. That really, really touches me. But I also have to say I have a heavy heart as well. I remember 15 years ago when I was a director of curriculum in a large suburban school district in Ohio. And we wanted to be the best. We wanted to be like Douglas County. And when I would ask the best educational scholars in the country, give me some exemplars of top districts in the country doing innovative work for children, doing the great work of public education, and Douglas County came up time and time again. But I'm also a little heavy-hearted right now when we look at how our buildings have deteriorated, Our programs are not as good as they used to be. And our star is not as shiny as it used to be when you look back at what people have said tonight. But we have an opportunity tonight to do it right, to get it right, to ensure our students have the best education we can provide them. Do they deserve second or third best? I say no. Tonight we can get it right. I want to give you a quick overview of our great district. And looking at the numbers, we're the largest employer in Douglas County. We have approximately 8,100 employees, 4,400 licensed educators, 68,000 students, the third largest school district in the state. And I say 68,000 students, and I really don't care what type of mode our kids are being educated. 95% of our students who attend a charter school come back to us. They're Douglas County school students, and we deserve to ensure each student is given an opportunity to be successful in life and in career. We have 91 schools, a 90.4% graduation rate, and folks, not that we can do better, we will do better. We cannot afford to allow a single student not to cross the graduation finish line. Over $106 million was earned in scholarships last year. We're going to work hard this year in 2019 to increase that. Innovation, we have an example is concurrent enrollment. For the 2017-18 school year, our students and parents saved over $2.3 million. And with the expansion of our concurrent enrollment program, or dual enrollment program, we're going to expand that. And as the previous speaker said, it's a major investment. There should not be any reason why a student leaving Douglas County School District should not have his or her first year of college paid for. No reason for that not to happen. Also, what's not there and should be there are efficiencies. We're working hard to develop partnerships with higher ed. We're looking at clean, renewable energy. And as someone said, and I'm touched by this as well, we need to reduce our legal costs. We lack attorneys, but we don't need to help our attorneys get rich over legal business. So I promise you, my promise to you tonight, we're going to work hard to reduce those legal costs and put that money back into the classroom. I'll go through this next slide rather quickly because you've heard why we need it. I think our speakers tonight have done a wonderful job, but very quickly, the best teachers for our students. And I want to add the best support staff for our students as well. I had an opportunity the other day to address our bus drivers. And as you know, our support staff are generally the first and the last people associated with our school who have contact with our students, and we need to take care of them as well. level of work after they finish high school. And also, this is something that really bothers me, it really touches me as a curriculum director, and that is the excellence in student programming. We need to ensure that all of our students have equitable access to an excellent educational program here in Douglas County. It bothers me when we go from one high school to the next. Some students have to leave school early. They cannot take a full load because we don't have the staff. We don't have the resources. That's within Douglas County, one of the greatest districts, not only in the state, but in America. We can do better than that. Next, I'm going to ask our Director of IT, who also functions as our COO, to come up. Got him?
It's pretty amazing to be in the school districts in this community where the public knows, if not as much, a lot about the school district, which makes our job much easier. I'll bring up a slide on the bond and the capital needs. A lot of people have already said this. I'm going to repeat a few things just because we had this in the presentation. We haven't passed a bond since 2006. Much of our capital work has been done with operation dollars, which essentially means that we look at the most critical needs which could potentially affect the programming of a school, move in the operation dollars to fix that need and continue operating, which we have heard from staff today. That has been a way of working, but is certainly not a sustainable way of working for the district as a whole. Even with the basic maintenance we have been doing when building a backlog of our operational needs, which at the current pace is about $25 million a year added to our current backlog of work which needs to be done from an operational perspective. And simply just from a rational perspective, 1/3 of a student's day is spent in a school building. And if we as parents ensure that 2/3 of their time is spent in the best possible facilities, we as a district have a job to maintain that 1/3 and make it the best possible facilities, which is why we're here. From a planning and construction perspective, the planning and construction team, in collaboration with the Long Range Planning Committee, the board, and the district leadership creates a capital improvement plan, which essentially is a tiered model of approaching issues we have in the district or capital needs we have. Tier 1 is termed as a necessary and critical component. If that fails during the course of a school year, it could potentially affect the operations of that building. It could shut down a building, or it could impact parts of the building. Tier 2 moves on from there and can affect parts of the programming, not necessarily the entire building, and so on and so forth. We have a capital improvement plan, which is then reflected in a master capital plan with all of these needs listed in a Tier 1 to Tier 4 priority. From all of that, we have presented options for our bond. A $250 million bond, which is option 1 in our case, allows us to invest $150 million towards all of our Tier 1 needs, which means any impact which could potentially close a school will get addressed in the next 4 years. It'll also allow us to then move on from Tier 1 and impact Tier 2 needs, which could be things like gym equipment, could be bleachers, it could be carpet. While that doesn't necessarily close a school, it makes the environment which makes it suitable for a student to come in and learn at their best opportunity. That's the $150 million towards Tier 1. The $61 million towards capital reinvestment would go into other facilities like security, into district support facilities, DC Stadium, Shea Stadium, Echo Park, transportation, bus fleet replacement. We have pushed out buying new buses for a very long time. We need to start updating them sooner or later, and now is a good time. It'll also impact playgrounds and athletic facilities and additional facilities in the district. Based on our most recent district assessments, we estimate that charter school needs between security and Tier 1 capital reinvestments is somewhere in the range of $3 to $9 million. And that number is a wide range simply because we are working with them to complete the assessment, understand their needs, and create a model which matches the district prioritization which has been going on for a while. And then the last bit, which you just heard so passionately from our students, the $39 million goes towards capital reinvestment in terms of construction. We will use that to complete the FPOD, which is one part of the capital construction. We'll also use that to create CTE opportunities within the district. So this will help us build programming within existing high school buildings for additional CTE, and also create an alternative high school education campus in the east planning area. Our bond option 2 takes all of those options and allows us to invest a little bit more in each of those buckets. It'll add $20 million, which will then impact additional Tier 2 needs. It'll also allow us to add $10 million towards capital reinvestment and increase the construction towards CTE programming in an additional $20 million amount. Pass it on to Ted.
Good evening. So Gotham took us through the bond options for capital needs. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about mill levy override dollars, which, as you know, is used for the operations of the district. Could be salary dollars, site-based budget for our schools. Most of you are probably fairly familiar with this slide. We know back in 2008, there was only about $622 per student difference between us and our highest competitor in the Denver metro region. Now it's $2,300 per student. We use Cherry Creek quite often as a kind of a measuring stick, and we know that's cost us about $100 million a year if we had the same mill levy override. You'll see down there at the bottom percentage increase, decrease over period. We're the only school in the Denver metro area there that's actually going the wrong way. Put that in context with the teacher salary, which we've heard about tonight. You can see why Cherry Creek can pay so much more than we can. They have those increased local dollars. So we've given 3 options here. We have a $30 million, $40 million, and $50 million override, and I'll go through what each of these are, and in most cases they compound upon one another. $13 million in targeted compensation adjustments. Those are internal pay gaps, anything from the remaining teachers who maybe weren't here through the pay freeze but came on shortly after and their wages have not increased as quickly as our minimums. So you have teachers who have worked here several years that are making just a few bucks less or more a month than teachers who are brand new. It is our certified, admin, classified, pro-tech. It's anything from raising minimum bus driver salary up to a more competitive rate, to looking at assistant principal salaries that have been fairly stagnant for years. So we have multiple pay groups who have not been touched in years that we could rectify with that $13 million. $8 million to increase school funding differentiated by student need and equity. You're all familiar with our student-based budgeting system, and as it sits now, all students are pretty much created equal. When one student is given the same amount of money as the other, but one has more risk factors, we create an unequitable system in our schools. We know we need to change that, but unless we want to have winners and losers, we need more money. So we've contemplated anything from raising the amount of money a student who is on free and reduced lunch might get, to small schools funding, which you know we're already doing out of highly impacted, but we'd like to bake that into the SBB formula. To students who are on gifted and talented plan that get the same funding as students who aren't. And we know that they need further resources, so that will help us create a little more equity in the system. When we went to our principals and asked in terms of psychological and physical safety, what is the #1 thing we could do for you? And across the board, didn't matter if it was elementary, middle, or high, the answer was elementary counselors. So we've looked at what would it cost to fund our schools to put an elementary counselor in every elementary building, and that's about $3 million. And finally, as you well know, we would pass through the 100% of the charter share of mill levy override on a per student basis. The difference between a $30 million ask and a $40 million ask is raising the targeted compensation up $4 million so we could either A, reach more employee groups, or B, provide more of an increase for fewer employee groups. In addition to adding elementary counselors, we could change the counseling ratio at our secondary schools. Right now, our secondary schools are staffed at about 1 to 350. We would like to be at 1 to 250, which would be in line with national standards. And we would be able to add another $1 million to our differentiated SBB, hoping to improve some of those programmatic offerings, whether that might be reinstating a foreign language program that hasn't been able to survive due to cuts, or adding some of those career and tech ed opportunities that Dr. Tucker talked about. And obviously, as our mill levy override increased, so would the share that we give to charters, because we continue to pass that through. At the $50 million, we're again adding more money into compensation. Again, same scenario. Keeping the $3 million for elementary counselors and the $3 million to change the ratio at our secondary schools. Keeping the $9 million for increasing equity in our SBB, but separating out the programmatic offering to add another $5 million. So in the $40 million, we're talking $9 million for SBB changes and programming. In the $50 million, we'd like to spend the $9 million on providing equity to SBB and taking that $5 million and putting it straight into increased programming. If our bond passes and we're able to add career and tech ed facilities to our high schools, we're going to need to pay those teachers for those classrooms. So we could increase that there as well. And I want to pass this off to Kim Crawford, who's going to talk to us a little bit about, if this measure were to pass, what those bond obligations would look like.
Hi, I'm Kim Crawford. I'm with Butler Snow. We have been the district's bond counsel for a very long time for the old elections. I'm an attorney. Sorry, but we don't get paid unless the bonds pass. However, if you do pass a bond election I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. Trying to talk to everybody, it's fine. Okay, better? Okay, good, thank you. Okay, great, thank you. So if a bond issue does pass, obviously school districts can share general obligation bond proceeds with their charter schools. However, as your bond counsel, we need to tell the district that there are some things you need to look at when you are making a decision as to how much and how you share your bond proceeds. It's very different than mill levy override proceeds, different laws. So with bond proceeds, there are two different things that you have to look at. You have to be aware of your state law considerations and then federal tax considerations. So state law, obviously, says that you can spend bond proceeds on charter school capital, because bond proceeds can only be spent on capital construction. You can't use bond proceeds to pay teachers, salaries, anything else. It's all capital needs. So you can spend it, you can give money to charter schools. However, you also need to be aware that any money that you give to a charter school or any capital that you provide to charter school, money for them to provide their improvements, if the charter school would fail or if they were unable to continue as a charter, those assets would need to come back to the district, because this money is money that your district is paying, and those assets belong to the district. So although you can certainly give money to the charter schools, you have to be careful how you structure that, what's actually being financed, a lot of questions that you need to ask before you should just give the money to them. So again, when you're looking to charter schools and talking to your charter schools, you need to find out what they're building with their bond proceeds. If a current site is being improved, who owns the site? One of the things that we have to look at is a lot of your charter schools generally, not necessarily yours, but I think some of them, finance their facilities through loans through the Colorado Educational Cultural Facilities Authority. When they're financed in that way, that organization actually has a mortgage on the property. Any improvements to that property become part of their property. So if you give them money to improve a facility that's not actually owned by the district or actually owned by the charter school but owned by SECFA, we have to make some considerations and adjustments to make sure that the money or any improvements would come back to the school district. federal tax law considerations are again, the pesky IRS is really stringent on how you can spend tax-exempt bond proceeds. So the IRS says that if you're going to give money, if they're going to give you a tax-exempt rate on your general obligation bonds, you have to use it for good governmental purposes. The IRS says that if you spend more than 10% of your bond proceeds on what they consider bad purposes, which would be non-governmental, working capital types of things, non-capital, then your bonds are at risk to becoming taxable, which is never good when you issue bonds. You always want them to be tax exempt. So the issue with charter schools, again, comes back to the SECFA bonds, their SECFA loans, is because if they default, if the charter schools default under those, the facility goes back to SECFA, which is a private institution, and if you have more than 10% of your bond proceeds in that facility, it could jeopardize your tax exempt status of all of your bonds. So you have to be careful how much you give them, where it goes, and how it's going to be used. And we have to make sure that there's provisions in all the documents that that allow you to share your funds, that as to what would happen if that would ever happen, how the proceeds would come back to the district, how you would get those assets back. So we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of some of the issues with sharing your bond proceeds. And certainly it happens all the time. School districts certainly share their bond proceeds. However, there's just some things we needed to make sure that you were aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and she is here free of charge tonight. Yes. Okay, in summary, in order to shape and support our Douglas County School District's future, we must pass a bond and MLO to equitably invest in our students, our schools, our community, and staff for the coming 5 years or so. Therefore, my staff members and I are recommending to our board of directors and our community option number one, a $250 million bond, and an MLO option, which is option two, $40 million. How much will this cost? The average home here in our county that's valued at $470,000 will pay an additional $208 a year, or $17.33 a month. We're going to continue to research and create a plan for future growth strategies, which could include land optimization, boundary optimization, and new construction. Without a bond, and I think this is as important as trying to make a case for a bond, our school funding stays flat, as it has pretty much stayed flat for the last 12 years, while expenses continue to increase, which will impact programming, class sizes, extracurriculars, etc. DCSD will continue to struggle in recruiting and retaining quality staff, teachers, and support staff. Transportation and other support services could be reduced to minimum levels. As you know, it's been reduced quite a bit over the years, and all of our students must pay to ride the bus or a bus. Unmet capital needs will continue to grow and become more expensive and risk extended building closure during emergency repairs. Again, you've heard some of the stories tonight about our buildings that need much needed repairs. Before I end and open it up for questions, I simply like to give this metaphor. If you were to take out your wallet, take out your checkbook, and I know many of you are a little bit more sophisticated than I am, you do all of it online, but if you had a check register and you looked at your checking account and for 12 years you've not had an increase in your household income, where would you be? Where would your family be? And if you looked inside your home, you looked outside of your home as well, and you've not made repairs in 12 years, where would your home be? And that's what we're looking at now. And this is about our students and about all of our support staff. We can do better. We will do better. and perhaps we'll have an opportunity in the first week in November to do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker and staff for that very concise and thorough presentation of our needs and your recommendations. I do want to remind our board as well as our audience tonight that we are not in a position to make a decision tonight on whether or not we approve or not approve of the superintendent's recommendation. That tonight really is a continuation for us to gather information and to get everything that we need so that when we reconvene for another board meeting on the 21st, we can make an informed decision. So I just want to remind our community tonight that we will not be making a decision whether or not to place this on the ballot or not, but we simply are gathering information. So with that, are there questions about the presentation or other things that you need to know before we go into that decision making on the 21st? Director Lung, Director Graziano? Director Lung. Director Graziano.
Yeah, my question is simple. I guess I thank you so much to all staff for putting that together. I really appreciate that, all your hard work. I guess my question is just around the recommendation, reasons why that was the recommendation versus other combinations of things that you could have done.
Yeah, I will make a few comments, and I'll ask anyone on my cabinet for comments as well. After spending the first month, I think 37 days here, talking with concerned students, parents, and staff about what our needs are, talking with community members about our needs. And I want to let you all know my philosophy is this: we're never going to ask for money unless we need it. Along with that, we have to demonstrate that need and show you efficiencies and ensure that you have a return on your investment. Now, the board may decide to go higher or lower, but after listening again to our community, our cabinet members, these are the recommendations, because we don't want to ask our community members for more than what we need, and we don't want to ask them for less than what we need. And I believe the recommendations that we've made should take care of us for the next 4 to 5 years, and I can stand by that unless there's a huge windfall from the state, which I don't expect, or there's a cut in state funding. A mantra that I've used over the last 11 years since I've been a superintendent is this: reasonable requests, levies, MLOs, at reasonable intervals. Reasonable requests at reasonable intervals, and I think this request is reasonable. Ted, Gotham, or Rich, or one of the Riches, anything you, well, not Riches, but Rich now. Yeah. Okay.
Director Lung. I'm sorry, and Director Graziano, did that answer your question? Okay, very good. Director Lung.
Okay, in the presentations, there's several times you mentioned about the charter school. And I would like you to address to the public whether the district has met the requirement to inform the public school. And I also know that the district has held a meeting which has close to 50 charter school representations from 16 charter schools all here. Can you describe to us how's the meeting go and what kind of suggestions and recommendations do you get from that charter school meeting?
Yeah, I'll start with a comment that I made earlier. About 95% of our students who are in charters, as a matter, 20% of the total population of our students are comprised of charter school students, and I know that's not a secret. 90 to 95% of those students who matriculate through the K through 8 program come back to us. And that's the main reason I'm recommending that we support our students, our charter students, through an MLO and through a bond. Have we met the legal guidelines to engage our charter parents? Absolutely. Our charter leaders? Absolutely. We've had meetings with our charter folks that you mentioned, Director Loon, a couple weeks ago, I believe, and over 50 plus of our charter operators were there, and it was a very civil meeting. It was a discussion about how we can best educate our students. And Director Long, I believe you were there, if I'm not mistaken. I know you asked about 5 questions, so hopefully I answered them all.
I just want you to describe how is the meeting goes and what kind of input do we get from the charter school leader at that meeting, and what's the genuine feelings, what is the incarnations, or how do they feel about this mill levy and bond?
Our facility staff members, upon the direction of Director Ray and our directors, visited with each of our charter schools in the district to ascertain their bond needs. Our previous board, I believe, had already recommended that 100% of their MLO will go to charter schools students, which simply means the money that comes from the district and the state simply follows those students to their charter schools. And that conversation in talking with our charter school operators really was a very, again, civil, understandable conversation. It wasn't contentious whatsoever. I've also begun to meet one-on-one with each one of our charter school operators to ask them for their support. Do we have any, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, do we have any charter school operators here tonight? Yes. And so many of you have expressed your concerns, and I want to thank you for your support, and I will be asking for each charter school operator support in this measure.
My second question is, how about the gathering the public inputs about the mill levy and bond? What have the district done? I know that the district has hold a lot of public meetings in different high schools. Can you tell us, what the district has done to gauge whether we have support or not for putting a mill levy and bond elections this November?
Okay. Normally, I would say I'm new and I don't know. I would use that as an excuse, but I've talked with community members, staff, and board members, and this conversation has been ongoing now for over a year, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a year and a half. And I know Aaron Kane, our former interim superintendent, has engaged or had engaged the community quite a bit about the need for an MLO and a bond.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. And just one clarification I want to make is regarding the 100% MLO pass-through was actually voted by this board and not the previous board. Okay. Just to correct that. Director Holtzman, do you have a question?
I actually have several, but we're 2 at a time, correct?
Two would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start there.
So my first question is really just a clarification. Will the recommended MLO amount that you're recommending be able to address the internal pay gaps for all staff? Will it be able to address the pay freeze years 2009 to 12 for all staff, as we were not able to do so in June? And will it further our goal of recruiting and retaining outstanding educators and staff?
I'll begin to answer your last question first. I certainly think it will be. Pay is one thing. Our teachers did not leave, and we still have great teachers and great support staff here as well, so I want to make sure our folks do understand that. Pay is one thing. We need to pay our bills. That's going to attract folks, but also we want to make sure our people feel rewarded. They feel valued. That's important. And the quality of life here. Some people left the district knowing that their quality of life would decrease, but they would feel more valued. So we need to work hard to ensure that our people feel valued financially and socially. And to answer the monetary question, I know for a fact it will begin to close pay gaps for everyone, our bus drivers, our educational aides, all of our support staff. And my recommendation is not just to close the pay gap for our teachers. We know our teachers, next to parents, have the biggest impact on student learning, but so do our support staff. So we're going to begin to close that gap as much as we possibly can.
Okay, so my second question will be, will the recommended MLO amount increase programs and curriculum available to students, such as specifically to address students with dyslexia needs. We've had a lot of public comment about we need to have better programming, curriculum, and instruction in that area. I know that someone mentioned the foreign language and offering band at elementary schools instead of having to pay for it, having it be a part of the public education. I just was looking at the different options and wanting to make sure that the one that you're recommending will be able to do that. And will it be able to help us with curriculum and instruction if we were able to expand CTE at Ponderosa?
The numbers that we recommended should be able to make some major inroads in regards to where we are right now. And we did not spell out specific programs because, in 37 days, I've not had an opportunity to take a deep dive into all the programming, but I promise you, we've heard from our gifted parents, we've heard from our SPED parents. We are going to address those areas.
Thank you.
Director Chancha-Shower and then Director Lemieux.
Actually, you started to address my question, but let me just ask it, and then if you would address it again. In your recommended option, the $9 million increase in school-level funded, differentiated by student needs and equity, programmatic options include special education needs and special education services?
Absolutely.
And where will it also address professional development needs?
If I were to look at one of our greatest needs, and that's professional development, and we need all hands on deck. We need our teachers helping us engage in professional development. We don't always need to bring an expert in every day, every month. We need to see what resources we have here in the district, and I believe we haven't capitalized on those resources. But we do need to look at a district-wide, a systemic expansion of professional development in the district.
So in the option that you're recommending, is that included in the thinking?
Yes, in the $9 million, it is included.
Director Lemieux.
So I have a few numbers questions, so I don't know if you necessarily want to answer this one, or maybe we could ask Mr. Smith, who's on the phone, I know as well. So,
sure. And his colleagues are here.
Yeah, so hopefully somebody in the room can answer.
Chief Financial Officer Scott Smith is on the phone. Are you still there, Mr. Smith? Just to make sure. Okay, we're just making sure that we're still connecting. All right.
Okay. Thank you. So I was looking at the difference between the MLO option 2 that you're recommending versus option 3, which is $10 million more. My question is, how close does that start filling the gap at the $40 million versus the $50 million to competing with other districts? So if we added the $40 million, how much closer are we to, say, Cherry Creek versus the $50 million in closing that competitive gap for all employees? And again, at this point, I think we should stop talking about just about teachers, because now all of these options, even if we went with one, is going to affect all of our employees in a positive way. So for all of our employees, what's the difference in getting us closer to closing that competition gap?
So, Mr. Smith, everybody's kind of looking like that's a you question. So, hang on just a second till we make sure we've got the volume.
Cherry Creek, they're at 25% of their total program in their mill-levy override. Right now, we're at about 6%. So, whether we're at 40 or whether we're at 50 in a percentage basis, we're still only going to be in the neighborhood of 15% of total program. So, we're definitely going to be able to close the gap with our neighbors, but the difference between 40 and 50 in terms of getting all the way to those districts who have gotten to 25% of total program, we would still have some ways to go past that.
Okay, can you clarify, are these numbers in addition to the 2006 ML mills that we get, or is this a completely different number now that we'll be working with? Because currently we get...
will continue to have our just under $34 million of mill levy overrides from previous elections, and this would be on top of that on an annual basis.
Excellent, thank you. And then, so you said we're currently at 6%. What is the top that we could go to? What's the most we could have in MLO percentage?
25%.
And the 40 would put us at what percent?
I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15%.
15%, and so 50 million would be maybe 17.5?
It would be somewhere in that neighborhood. We would be happy to follow up with the board with the exact numbers, but you're definitely right in the ballpark there.
Okay, thank you very much. And then, so I was looking at that, and that would only be about a $5 difference if we did the 40 million versus the 50 million. And if I looked at the two numbers, if we did the max recommendation for bond and the max recommendation for MLO, that'd be about $23 a month versus $17 a month at what the staff presented us in a recommendation. So that's about a $5 difference. Dr. Tucker, do you not think we could sell that $5 difference to our community?
At the end of the day, it's going to be, as you're alluding to, the will of the community. And I'm based upon what I'm hearing tonight in conversations I've heard, I think we can, but I wanted to make sure that we had a comfortable number. And again, I want to go back to my philosophy. Reasonable requests at reasonable intervals. Reasonable requests at reasonable intervals. And I'm also a big believer that when we ask, the ask should be around 6 meals, 5 to 6 meals. And I know we're trying to play catch up. We have a lot of ground to make up. I certainly understand that. But I want to make sure that, again, we're being reasonable with our taxpayers. And this will also give us an opportunity to prove and regain the trust of our community that we're being good stewards of their money and that we're providing a world-class education to our students.
I want to interject before Director Lemieux follows up with a question again that this discussion is a potential for an MLO bond. And I know that oftentimes if our community is tuned in, it looks like or may sound like that decision has already been made, especially with us giving such specifics about what this might go towards. So I just want to again just remind our community that maybe just tuned in that this by no means has been decided, but it's just us trying to get information to understand the details should it be decided. Director Lemieux?
Very good, thank you. And I was just looking also back on the MLO recommendation between option 2 and option 3. And if we decide to put this, one of the things I was noticing that's the major difference is that 10 million in MLO share, nope. The 5 million increased for programming offerings like CTE. What are you hearing as you're speaking? I know you've been meeting with some folks in our business community, and I know that we've, as board members, done pretty extensive discussions with members of our business community, and that's one thing they've been asking for a lot. Why did you decide option 2 versus option 3, given the feedback we've had from our business community and the importance they value in that?
I want to make sure I'm hearing your question directly. Why am I decide a lower amount for CTE in one option versus the other? Again, this is a maiden voyage for us because for years our programs have been based on site-based management. And we, in public education, over the last 15 years have been tricked into saying that in order for a student to be successful, he or she must go to a 4-year college. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. I'm here to tell you it is my job, the job of our outstanding teachers, support staff, and cabinet members to ensure that each student is ready and prepared to go to college without remediation. But we're wrong if we're pushing a 4-year college for everyone. Again, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, that we're going to make sure that our students are prepared to go to college. And we don't, and I'm recommending a smaller amount because for some reason across America, we've gotten rid of CTE programs. Auto shop, right now at a Douglas County High School, there's a wait list in their automotive program. And one of the toughest conversations I've had with a parent was why her son couldn't get in the program. And she said, you know what, That's the only reason he's going to come to school, to be engaged. But we brought into this philosophy 15 years ago, and I won't call any people's name, who convinced us to move away from home ec, to move away from automotive repair, to move away from carpentry and so forth. So we don't have the facilities in our buildings right now. We talked about is it FPOD? Yes, to do that. So give us a couple years to get up to speed with that and to partner with our folks. And I'm telling you right now, the business community is ready to go. One of our towns, I better say towns or city, because if I say town, you know who I'm talking about. One of our towns or cities said, look, we have a mock-up right now of a campus that will consist of higher ed, our colleges and universities working together, Douglas County School District, as well as the automotive business coming together, building a single campus. And they said to me, Thomas, if you all don't do it, we're going to go find someone else who will do it. So again, we'll build the capacity, and then maybe 5 years, reasonable levies, reasonable intervals. We see the program is working, then we come back and we expand it.
Director Vogel, I know you have some questions possibly?
I do not, because my brilliant colleagues asked them already.
Oh, very good. All right. Other questions, Director Lung?
I have two questions that I want to ask. One is, obviously, we have not passed one since 2006. And if the board choose to put it in, this must pass, otherwise it's going to be a disaster. So I understand why you put a much more conservative number in there. My question to you is, do we have any polling that is suggesting what's the appetite of the electrics? What's the size, what the amount that they're willing to pay?
Yes, we do have polling, and the numbers I presented really jive well with the polling. We looked at 30 million and 50 million MLO, and they polled about the same. But I also know where our appetite is, what we can afford right now, and that we need to prove ourselves to our community. And so that's where the 40 million came in. And in regards to the bond, we looked at 250 million, 300 million, and was there another one? And 400 million. And there wasn't a great appetite for the 400 million. And I'm going to be honest with our board, and I'll always be that way. I just didn't feel comfortable asking for a $400 million bond at this time. Because again, we don't have the basic infrastructure. When we come back again, we can then focus on CTE. We can have a greater emphasis on our dual enrollment partnerships and so forth, utilizing more of our buildings. Once we get our buildings where they should be utilized, we can look at bringing more college classes and university classes in our buildings, utilizing our buildings year-round.
I appreciate, your administration's cautious approach. My second question is, we look at those number, and we're talking about the residential rate and how much they are paying. I myself, as a business owner that own property in Douglas County, I know that my assess rate is fixed at 29%, whereas my colleague who own a residence, they probably at 7.8% or something like that. Do you have a slide to show a business owner how much we are paying for different scenario?
Okay. We don't have a slide tonight, but we can get that information out. I do apologize. We didn't have a mock-up for businesses. We do have one for residential owners.
Director Vogel?
So in terms of the bonds, isn't it true that there becomes a point where if you ask for too much money, you can't get the work done fast enough because you got to sell the bonds in a certain time frame? And since basically our work in our schools, the bulk of it gets done in the summertime, and doesn't there become a point when it's a too big of an ask to be able to get it done?
Yeah, absolutely. There's in that, let's say in a period of 4 to 5 years, given the time we have to spend the bonds down, there's no way we will have all the work completed.
And this, my question would be probably for CFO. I'm wondering, when you look at the $40 million MLO, what is the average per student increase for the $40 million MLO?
It would depend on how you allocated it. So I think that's part of the next conversation, because the piece around equity and funding is not going to look the same for every single school. It's really going to be targeted at the needs that are in our schools. If you were looking at putting, for instance, in the $50 million ask, the $5 million in for just programming, that's about $100 a student across our neighborhood schools.
But it would seem to me that, Mr. Smith, that since we have a dollar figure for what we're passing on to the charter schools, that we might be able to calculate from that line what that per student MLO would be. Or am I missing something?
No, it depends on how we're looking at it. If we're looking at what dollars would go into SBB, that's just divided by about 50,000 kids. The difference being, if there's money going into existing employees in terms of trying to close pay gaps, that is money that's going into schools and going to benefit our students and our teachers, but it's not additional purchasing power that our schools are going to have. So it's not as simple as being able to say this is money that's going directly into our schools and they're going to be able to purchase more with it. It's being directed into our school-based employees.
And then my other question is just with our compensation adjustments. I know that Mr. Lilly had spoken about how we took care of one employee group last year because we had the budget to do it. Did we assume in these estimates that we are now going to take care of our other employee groups, especially those that also experienced pay freeze years?
I believe we have. I think our HR folks and our assistant superintendent can probably speak a little bit more to how they looked at the pay gaps.
Mr. Knight?
You bet. So Mary ran several different options of every category, from bus drivers to EAs to assistant principals to teachers, and what various scenarios would cost. Since we are, obviously the board is contemplating this, we have every scenario you could think of to try and rectify as many employee groups as we can. So each of those are available.
So there's a scenario for that, those pay freeze, those employees of other employee groups.
There are estimates. I think to do that right, HR would have to go through employee after employee, but yes, there are estimates of what each employee group would cost to get them to reasonably eliminate some of these internal pay gaps.
Very good, thank you. Last question for this agenda item, Director Holtzman. We'll do 2 plus 1.
Okay, good. Because I have 2 that I really need to ask at least. We got to take extra time. Sorry.
Director Graziano's point.
Could somebody please help me get back to slides 6 and 7? They're the bond slides. I just wanted to clarify because it wasn't completely clear to me, so I thought maybe there'd be other people that would have questions. So in row 1, that is talking about all of our schools that are not governed like a charter school. They're not organized in that way, correct? So a charter school is obviously a Douglas County school, but you're not talking about charter schools in row 1.
Not in row 1,
Okay.
but in row 2.
And so then in row 2, you do specifically talk about amounts, $3.9 million estimated for charter school safety and tier 1 needs.
3 to 9 million estimated.
Okay. And so my questions kind of go towards that range. And I appreciate the information that bond counsel gave us about the legal, statutory, and federal tax laws. And I think there's possibly some other state laws and situations, and just kind of wondering how those will be considered. So there is a state law that provides for capital construction grants for our charter schools. And I believe, if I'm reading it correctly, that in Douglas County combined, our charter schools will receive a little over $3.9 million in capital construction grants for the for this school year. We're starting. And I'm just wondering if that will be factored in, if that's a part of that range. I realize that we have a lot to consider after looking at the bond, who will want to participate and that sort of thing. Is that one of the factors that might be considered?
That's certainly one of the many factors that we're looking at, because we know of our 21 charter schools, they're in different conditions and they have different needs. For example, one charter school stated that we may only need $20,000 or $30,000 toward this, or one may need more than that. So again, we're going through very systematically looking at the various needs of our charter schools, and we think that $3 to $9 million estimate is pretty robust.
So
and Rich, do you want to comment on your visits to the schools regarding particularly safety and security? We know that's at the top of our list for all of our schools.
So thank you. So I had the opportunity to go around to the charter schools last week and do an assessment or analysis of all their safety and security needs. What I realized going through is that we have a district standard that we have in place for all of our traditional schools. In the charter schools, not every school is held up to the standard. So we sat down prior to myself going out to the schools and said, this is the standard that we have currently in our schools. And so we need to make sure that we're trying to get all the charter schools up to the same standard. So some schools had camera systems, some schools had other things, some had intercom systems, things that have to deal with safety and security. So when we put everything together into a spreadsheet, we realized that one school may only have something that would be about $30,000 into, to get them up to our standard, but then you're maybe another charter school that might be $120,000 or $130,000 to get them up because they don't have certain things in place at all. So I will tell you that I had overwhelming support from when I met with the charter folks. They were all just excited that the district was finally looking back and saying, we're glad that you guys want to help. So if a lot of people don't understand, the charter schools are under the security umbrella under the district. So even though people try to say they're separate, but they do all fall underneath the security plan, and they do pay what's called an FTE to be so that we actually come in from the district security side and actually help them out so that they do have some standards in place to meet state guidelines. So all of them were just excited that the district was actually looking at them now to bring them back in. I heard stories about 5 to 10 years ago where everybody was one, and then all of a sudden there was a separation. They talked about buying power, about just traditional things, and just some of the themes that I was in there about, like cleaning supplies, that they're paying X amount over here if they could get into part of the district to just get a discount in prices, things like that. So it was kind of interesting to go through and hear what they had to say, but there were very large parameters between some of the schools. Some of them had the same standards that we had, or even maybe better than what we have in the district. So then we would have to look to whatever monies that would be available. We'd have to look to say, we're going to put that money, we'd have to do this over in that school, or one of the charter schools may require a lot more money. So
thank you.
If that helps out.
Thanks.
Quick follow-up by Director Vogel, and I'll come back to you, Director Holtzman.
Do our charter schools have the radios that tie in with you guys or connect with you guys?
They will, yes.
They will, okay,
So
but they don't
yes.
currently, okay.
So when our new interoperability system, we included when I met with the sheriff, the chiefs, and all the fire districts, that was part of our plan, is to make sure that they also have immediate access into our system. What I will tell you is a lot of them have different formats. So a lot of them have different camera formats. And so the amount of cameras that we monitor, but every single charter school that I visited, they were all in agreement that they're going to give us links into their system so that we can actually watch their schools live if there was something that we can actually pull it up. So they were all willing to say, let's get this together, let's be on the same page, and let's work together.
So quick follow-up to that, too, and this is for Kim, our bond counsel. We heard you say that in order for us to improve a charter facility, that we have to be in a position to bring that asset back to the district should that school go belly up. So what I'm wondering is, you put a new door on a charter school. Does that mean that you go, if that charter school no longer exists, you go and take the door back? I mean, how do you deal with those kind of assets?
That's the issue.
Yeah.
That really is the issue. So you can look to that, and you need to comply with state law, obviously, and so you have to have an agreement, and you have to have some sort of plan as to how you're going to get the asset back. So what we've been doing, or what we've done with other charter schools and other districts, is you have this agreement. It says that if the charter fails, that the district has an opportunity to purchase, to get that asset back. You get like a right of first refusal or something like that. How it actually works out, hopefully it's not that onerous. Sometimes if it is a roof or a door or something like that, other districts use mill levy override money for things like that because it's a lot less money, a lot easier to replace. I think if they're building a brand new facility, it's much easier for you to retain control of the facility. I know this district in particular has done its own COPs for charter schools for them to build their own facilities. So there are options. What I wanted to do tonight is just to make you aware that there are hoops that you'll have to jump through. The thing for federal tax purposes, if it's under 10%, it's a pretty easy bar there, especially with the bigger bond issue. But you just got to make sure for state law purposes that we've addressed some of these concerns, and if there's a way that you can get their capital construction needs without bond money, with mill levy override money, or doing some sort of exchange, it just kind of making you aware that there are some considerations that you need to take before you just give the money to the charter schools.
Thank you. Last question, Dr. Holtzman.
Okay, so I have a little comment on this slide, and then I have a question. So just to clarify, because I'm trying to be quicker, when we're talking about the bond slide, and I appreciate, Rich, what you're talking about, going out to all the schools, and I believe there were other people that went out to the schools, and you may not know if you were not at the meeting with the charter schools that they're going through the same process, is my understanding now, in terms of they're being assessed in the same way that any other school has already been assessed. So in other words, quick point, I think that all of our other schools were not included in a master capital plan until they were 10 years old. Their needs were assessed at that point. And so I'm assuming those age questions would be similar considerations as we look at the charter schools.
Okay, Rich, number 2, Cosgrove.
Director Holtzman, thank you for the very good question. So we have been aligned in our approach. And so basically, as we have done for our neighborhood, magnet, and alternative schools, we assess 10 years after a school was opened, because our master capital plan will include those capital needs at the 15-year point, so the 5th year of that master capital plan. And so this next master capital plan, which the Long Range Planning Committee will present to the board, as well as our charter school assessments, we looked at any school 2007 or younger as not having any severe needs that would impact a school unless it is an anomaly. If it's 2006 or older, then those Tier 1 needs for charters were included in our analysis, just like they are for our neighborhood schools.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is the last question I have right now. So my question is, what if Amendment 73 is certified, and what if it passes? How will this affect Douglas County School District, and will we still need a local MLO bond?
A couple of our speakers said it best tonight. Our focus should be on Douglas County School District, our 68,000 students. I think it would be a big mistake if we look forward to Amendment 73 passing. Now, we've kept a very close eye on it. We've done some particular brainstorming in the event it passes, but it would be a huge mistake for us to couple those two. Because remember, local tax money stays in your district. And I think that's what we should be about. I spent 11 years in Ohio. We had a similar measure called tangible personal property tax, which was a tax on local businesses. You can imagine many of the businesses did not like being taxed on their inventory. That money was once local, meaning that the local school districts received the money to educate its kids. Lo and behold, our awesome lawmakers in Ohio took that local tax money, sent it to Columbus, and it was redistributed. I am not a big fan of that, and I won't be a big fan of that. So that's why you're not hearing me say, let's count on this money. I think it's a bad mistake.
All right, Director Lemieux, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go with Director Lemieux and Director Chandrashore. I'm going to have to cut you off because we are way over time. So this is really our last question.
Oh, and it's such a boring one because it's about interest. What would be the interest payments difference between the $250 million bond and the $300 million bond?
Okay, let me find an expert on that. Scott, are you still there?
I am. I don't want to speak incorrectly. It's not a lot. I know our financial advisors are there as well. I don't have the math in front of me. We could definitely get that to you, though, Director Lemieux.
Okay, since that was a quick one, Director Chandrashore, you're the last.
Thank God, because I was going to ask it anyway. So I'm just wondering where school safety for all of our schools is being addressed.
Right there in the $61 million. Gotham, am I missing anything?
It's in the middle here.
Microphone.
Going to address it.
Yeah,
okay.
We have like 15 things in there.
Thank you.
All right, again, staff, well done. Thank you very much for enduring our questions. Board, we have a lot of thinking to do between now and the 21st. I am going to recommend that we take a break and try to shoot back by about 5 minutes if we could.
Bye, Scott. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Chancho Shore.
Our server rating on. This is,
yeah, we had
I know it's important. I know. But we can always ask our questions. So.